In this video, we're going to show you how to install the starter on your Ford Mustang located on the passenger side lower portion of the engine. We're going to use a 1/2-inch socket. We're going to go ahead and loosen the nut on the terminal here. And go ahead and give this a little wiggle. Now we did spray this down with some penetrant here to go ahead and loosen things up. Wiggle that terminal off and just set that down aside. Now before we remove our starter, our particular vehicle is a convertible and we have this cross member right here. If your vehicle does not have it, you can go right into removing the starter. But we're going to go ahead and remove this here. There's a series of 13mm bolts. We're going to start by the 4 on the front side and then move to the outer edge. Now I want to go ahead and gain access to this bolt right here, but in order to do so, we need to remove our trim button from our fender liner here. Go ahead and pop that out. We should be able to go ahead and pull this aside, allowing us access to that bolt. Use a 10mm socket right here to go ahead and remove this bolt. Go ahead and pull our cover down here, get our 10mm deep socket in there, and loosen and remove this. Now that we have this bolt out, we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side on the driver's side. Get all those bolts out, and then we'll remove this bracket and set it aside. Now up on the driver's side, there's one actual hidden bolt for our cross member up on the front side here. And we need to get this plastic cover to pull out. We're going to use a trim tool on the bottom side of our ground effects here. And we want to go ahead and remove these here. And sometimes these break, so you might have to source a replacement set. But you want to pop out the 2 buttons here. Should allow you to pull this back. And here is that bolt right here. So let's go ahead and get that out. Now we're going to put our jack underneath here just to try and hold it up. Once we remove that last bolt, we don't want this to bonk us in the head. Just hold that up like that. A little bit of pressure. Now with that last bolt out, we're going to slowly lower our jack. There we go. Go ahead and pull that out and set it aside. Now on the bottom side here, we have our ground strap going to the bottom side of our starter. We're going to use our 9/16 shallow socket on our ratchet. And we'll go ahead and loosen this. Pull that ground wire off, tuck that off somewhere. Now the lower stud here has a 1/2-inch nut on it, which is different from the nut we just removed, which was a 9/16. We're using a 1/2-inch deep socket. Now there's 2 studs holding the starter in place. There's one here, which we can obviously see, and then there's one up around the other side of it, up on the top there. So we want to go ahead and get to that next. Let's spin the stud out. Set that aside. Now we have our starter up here, but we put a mirror in place here so you can actually see the bolt we need to get to. Now we're going to use some long extensions. We're going to use a 1/2 inch socket on a swivel head to go ahead and get to this. Now I'm just going to reach up in here to get this on that bolt. Now the starter is going to come loose once we give it a little bump there, but there are wires also attached to the top of it we're going to have to disconnect. So once we remove this bolt here, we're going to go ahead and pull that mirror out so we can go ahead and drop that starter down and gain access to those wires there. Use my magnet, pull that out. So on the starter solenoid up there, we can see some wires. We're going to go ahead and disconnect those there. We're going to try and shift the starter to go ahead and try and gain access to those a little bit easier. I'm just going to use the handle on my hammer here just to give that a few taps. We're just trying to position the starter so we can get the snout out of the bell housing of the transmission. And I'm just going to use a small pry bar here just to try and persuade these lines over a little bit. There we go. Pump our cover off here. So there's 2 wires we have to disconnect. One is this one here, the other one is this. The starter will be free. And we'll go ahead and swap in our new starter. Now this is a 10 millimeter. We're gonna go ahead, loosen and remove this nut first. I'm gonna throw that nut back on there. The other nut here is a 13 millimeter. Loosen and remove that. And there you have it. Now when you take out the old starter, you definitely want to go ahead and compare it to the new starter. Make sure everything matches up as it should. On our new starter here, it does come with this little tab on here in case your particular model vehicle that you're installing this on has a wire with a connector that slips onto that. Well, our vehicle does not. So what we're going to do is simply remove that nut. Going to remove that bracket. And then we're just going to keep that lock washer and the nut for when we install our smaller wire onto this. I'm going to remove the nut and washer on the other side for our positive wire, and our starter is ready for installation. I'm going to go ahead and install our large power wire here, get our lock washer on, get that nut zipped down on there. I want to go ahead and snug that into place. You don't want to over tighten it. You definitely want to make sure that it is tight though. You don't want that to come loose. Go ahead and get this wire pushed down and on. Don't forget your lock washer. Spin that down. Let's go ahead and tighten that. Now we're going to go ahead and feed our starter up and into place. I want to make sure that you have it positioned correctly as well. Our solenoid was up on the top, so we do have to tuck that up and in first. And we're basically just going to reverse the procedure of this going up and in. And we're going to do the same thing here. Just gently work those lines over to the side. We're not kinking them, so don't force anything like that. There we go. There it is. So now the starter is up above the cross member here and above the lines. Go ahead and put our pry bar aside. Now what we want to do is go ahead and push us up. We need to get the snout into the bell housing of the transmission, making sure that the gear is facing inward. And then we're going to go ahead and try and get our upper bolt in, and our lower bolt might be the lower bolt and then the upper, whatever's easier for you. Let's go ahead and start to feed this up and in. You know, when we removed our cover from our starter, when we dropped that down, this was actually broken on the other side here. The little retainers to secure that were broken, so we couldn't reinstall this. Make sure that you get that reinstalled if yours is not broken onto there. It's not critical to the operation, it just helps protect the positive feed wires on the top from anything coming in contact with it. But as long as you don't have anything else around there, you shouldn't have any issues. Now at this point here, with the starter set into the bell housing of the transmission, we go ahead and get our upper bolt started. Now you can reach right up in there, and with that starter set in place, you can go ahead and get that bolt started, spin that in as far as you can. I have that bolt almost completely bottomed out. And with that bolt in, we're going to go ahead to the lower bolt and take our lower bolt here and get that started. I like to thread these in as far as I can by hand. It's not critical, you just have to catch it a couple threads and then zip it on in with your ratchet. Let's get snug down that starter there. You want to make sure that's good and tight. Snug that in there. And then we'll go ahead and snug down the lower bolt. All right, that bolt is seated. Give it a little bit more. I want to make sure that's good and tight. At this point here, we have our cross member on our jack. We want to just try and get this somewhat positioned in the correct place. So we're going to try and get this up. We have that passenger side up underneath the plastic. I'm going to go ahead and raise up our jack. There we go. So go ahead and raise up our jack a little bit more. Just want to get this in the general area and get it supported in place. Now I want to go ahead and start getting some of the larger bolts in place. Now we put some anti-seize compound on our bolts before we put them in. We're just going to get that one started. Let's go ahead and get another one started. It's going to be right on the front side here. Peel our plastic back. Get this bolt started in here. Now our plan is to go ahead and get all of the bolts started, and then we want to come back and tighten them down. Once we get that started, let's go ahead and zip that in a little bit. Now on the passenger side, you only have the single bolt and then you have the two smaller ones here, whereas on the driver's side, you have a bolt here, you have one up underneath the plastic here, as well as these two little ones. Then we have the one bolt here, right near the back side of the lower control arm. Now as far as large bolts go, we're going to go ahead and repeat the process on the passenger side for the front of the crossmember area, as well as the bolt hole on our back side of the control arm area here, and then we'll install the 4 small bolts. Going to install the 4 smaller bolts. one here. And once you got these started, go ahead and repeat for the driver's side. Go ahead and tighten these down. Go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. Once we get all of our bolts in, we need to install our plastic push pins. We have our 2 large push pins. One here on the driver's side, and then go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. Remove your jack. And remove that. Grab that ground terminal. Hook that up. And you want to use your ratchet to go ahead and snug these down in a position. You want to go ahead and snug that down gently. Now you don't want to over tighten these here. You want to get that snug, grab that terminal, give that a wiggle, make sure that doesn't spin on there.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.